All right, so this is the Public Market Advisory Commission meeting, and it is November 17th, and it's 5:02. So, Stephanie, can you call us to order?
5:32.
I'm sorry.
We are called to order.
A long day.
All right, you're most of the way there. All right, so yes, I will do the roll call. So Commissioner Young.
Here.
Commissioner Wolf.
Here.
Commissioner Willett. We see that you are here. And Commissioner Farrell.
Here. Sorry, here.
Okay, great.
I got it to work.
Okay, good. So we have everyone except for Nemeth with us right now. All right.
All right, so the next item on the agenda is the approval of the agenda for this week. Could I get a motion to, does anybody have any additions or anything like that to it? Okay. Could I get a motion to approve the agenda then?
I move to approve.
And a second?
Second.
Thanks. All in favor, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay, the agenda is approved. So now we move on to the first public comment.
All right. Is there any member of the public that would like to give us some commentary in the first public comment? If so, please raise your hand and I will allow you to talk. I do see a hand raised and I am allowing them to talk right now. All right. Go ahead. If you want to unmute yourself, you can go ahead. There you go.
Okay. Was delaying was this is Bruce Upson, market vendor. I had a comment that there are two items on here supposedly for final approval of rule changes. And while I know that there's been discussion on these things, it seems like they should be published in some way so that the vendors actually know what is being proposed for the final for changes to the rules that they're going to be living under. And I haven't seen anything to indicate that they've come out. And so I'm concerned that, you know, we're not getting good communication here. That I know it's hard to get. A lot of people don't know anything even about the Market Commission and that, but it seems like when there's rule changes like that, it should be published before it goes to a meeting for a final draft when nobody's ever seen it. So that's basically my concern there.
Thanks, Bruce. Is there anyone else that would like to give some commentary? All right, that is the only one I am seeing for right now.
All right, so then the next item is the approval of the minutes from the previous meeting. Are there any changes, additions, anything like that from the October minutes from our meeting? Okay, great. Could I have a motion to approve?
I move to approve.
And could I have a second? That's Eric's raising his hand, so we'll have that as the second.
Good.
Everybody that approves the minutes from the October meeting, please raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Jeff Nemeth just called me and said he is trying to get on, but he is having trouble. So he's going to keep trying, but he's also wondering if Stephanie could resend him the link, and maybe his is not working for some reason, but he is trying to join us.
Yep, I can go ahead and resend that right now.
Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Stephanie's.
Give me one moment. I think it's not letting me resend it because it's currently happening, but actually, no, never mind. Here it is. All right, I did resend it just now. So hopefully that one works.
All right. In the meantime, Stephanie, do you want to give us the updates on the regular business, the
Sure.
facility and staffing updates?
So as you all can see, Alex is present. Alex is back. He completed his 2 months time off. Although he wasn't too far away, he was working at Ratterman Bread. So he was still there on market days, although not in the office side of things. We were very excited to have him back and be back to full staffing, at least for the time being. And I think in addition to that, this is sort of a fluid with the volunteers piece as well. We've had a lot of really great volunteers and staff from other sites filling in on those 2 months when he was gone. Special shout out to the Ann Arbor Senior Center for letting us borrow a bunch of their staff throughout, and then also helping us fill in for any holiday staffing needs that we were going to have when people take vacations. So short and sweet on those 2 items.
Will you be able to use volunteers on a regular basis or only when you have holes in the staffing?
It really depends. I mean, this time of year, there's really not all that much extra stuff. We do have a regular volunteer who comes every other week for about an hour or so. Gina Lynn Potteron, she is great. It's been super helpful. But, once we get back into the warm weather and special events, sure. It's just that, we haven't really had all that much requests for it, A, and then B, as we're slowing down, all of the extra tasks needs to fill staff hours. But, next spring for sure, we can use people always. And that's the same thing too, that I mentioned the holiday staff vacations coming up. Macy and myself will be off for the Thanksgiving markets, both next Wednesday and next Saturday. But Alex will be there holding down the fort, and we're having another senior center person coming in on Saturday. And then in December, we will be open again on Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve. And both Alex and I will be there. And Macy will be actually on vacation. She's taking a special trip to France. So we're all very jealous. And we will miss her. But we might also reach out again to additional people. But I think the 2 of us will probably be plenty for those December markets. And then back in January, we will all be present, starting when our new hours, our winter hours start, which is January 7th, starting at 8 a.m. as opposed to 7. And I believe that is all I have for those agenda items.
Great. So then
Unless
the
there's
next
any questions.
oh, updates on the events.
So we did have a great trick or treat event the last Wednesday of October. I know I've received some questions from vendors as like, why did we do it on that day? Why wasn't it a Saturday? And the main logic to that is when Give 365 had people available. And from our perspective, it actually was great because we had a bunch of school groups come through, and we might have actually probably tapped into more kids than we would have necessarily on a Saturday. Plus, Saturday, late October markets are still very, very full. So this time, because it was Wednesday, we actually had a space to have extra. There was like a little putting green out there. There was a sticker on a pumpkin activities. We encouraged costumes. There was a candy station throughout the market. That worked really well. I'm not sure if next year we'll go back to Saturday or not. We, of course, encouraged vendors to have costumes and give out their own candy on the Saturday, but the designated event, which we had volunteers staff it, was that Wednesday. And, it was the weather was a little strange, but it ended up being really good regardless of the sort of rain mist that we experienced. But not sure about next year, but I did get a few vendors mention that they would have wanted to participate on a Saturday, but that just was not feasible for this year. So let's see. Sorry, I did just get an email from Jeff. Still trying to get in. All right, let's see if this works. But that was a successful event, even though it was sort of a last minute thing, and we were reliant on when Give 365 had volunteers and staff bodies available.
And then it also talks about food trucks. You covered that mostly last time, right?
That was mostly the rallies. This was specifically about the food trucks on market days. So we have had 2 food trucks that have been doing really well for us. One is the taco truck, which has been coming since the end of October. They are interested in coming every Saturday until they pretty much don't want to anymore, or we get too full, which usually happens sometime in May or late May is when we become too full again on Saturdays for trucks. So we're very excited. It's El Mariachi Loco. They have got really great tacos, tortas, burritos, other items. And they're very good to work with. We first encountered them this year. I pretty much bumped into them at another event, invited them to come to food truck rallies, and that's worked out so well that they're coming every Saturday now. Last Saturday was sort of a special situation, which we were double booked on food trucks. We had Fork in Nigeria food truck as well as the taco truck, even though the weather was a little bit, again, strange. It's that in-between time, a little bit snowy. And then on Wednesdays, we've been having the Vegano Italiano, which is a vegan Italian food truck come. And they're going to be coming on Wednesdays as well through the end of the Wednesday market, which ends on December 21st for the year. And I believe Jeff has finally joined us. So hooray. It was a little bit, technology doesn't always work out. So glad you could make it. All right, I'm just going to make a note of this. And yeah, in terms of plans for food trucks moving forward, at this point, the reason that we picked these 2 is that they were the ones that approached us and were interested. And again, obviously, everyone loves a taco truck. I'm not going to lie. The vegan one, it's a little bit more of a tough sell, obviously, because it's a very niche food. And also Detroit Street Filling Stations right across the street. So there's a plethora of vegan options during the day. But as far as I know, they have a following. So they say they have people that find them every time. So they seem happy about it. So that's sort of the status of our market day food trucks for the rest of the year and until question mark.
It'd be lovely if they could come for the January and February markets, because I think that would really draw people to the market during a time when the attendance is usually low.
Yep. The taco truck, they set, they're nice and warm inside of there. So it's really just an event if customers and vendors want to stand around and wait, but they're relatively quick as well. So, and who knows, maybe one of these days when the restaurant is back open, we could also have a cross marketing thing there when that day comes. So no pressure.
All self-inflicted pressure.
Right. And that is all I have about food trucks on market days.
And then the holiday markets.
Yes. So Alex and I have been talking about this week in terms of, since it's the first time in a while that we're having a Christmas Eve market again. Last year, the market fell on Christmas and New Year, so we didn't have a market for 2 weeks. But we've been getting a lot of questions about this year. So we're, getting together some of the details for what a Christmas Eve market could look like. We had a brass band that did approach us that we thought could be maybe interesting, because I know we've had that sort of thing in the past for holidays. I know we've floated the idea of like trying to get the chestnut people back, but I'm not sure, what the status is. And that's the Michigan Chestnut Growers Association, to have something like that. So we're in the early stages of figuring that out. There's also been a lot of questions about next Wednesday's market, the market before Thanksgiving. It will be more well attended than, usual Wednesday this time of year, but we're not really sure if, and also at this point, don't really have time to kind of just throw together a special event beyond just regular marketing, on Saturday, telling people about it, social media, stuff like that. But we're pretty much focusing our attentions on that Christmas Eve market, because we've been getting a lot of inquiries about it already. I should also probably mention, it's not so much us, but we've been getting mountains of questions about Kindlefest. Again, not an event that we host, but it's an event that is at the market. And this year, not sure if you all have heard, but it's going to be really different. It's going to be more of an atmospheric event, is how I would describe how it's been described to me. There's going to be live music. There's going to be food trucks, kids activities, beer and wine tent, but it's not going to have the vendors that people are used to. And that's being swapped out by just having all of the Carytown businesses open late. But the asterisk there is the city is embarking on a brand new holiday gift market, which I think they're just calling the holiday gift market. And that's going to be at Liberty Plaza. So that will be the same day and time as the Kindlefest event in Carytown. So December 2nd, 5 to 9, I think is the parameters on that. And I know that event's going to have 30 vendors. Most of them are vendors from the artisan market, although there are a few that are our farmers market artisans as well, that will be in Liberty Plaza for that. And again, of course, Main Street, their businesses will be open late for the Moonlight Madness event as well. So again, not technically us, but it does include our vendors and our space. So I figured it was worth mentioning.
Great.
Yeah, Stephanie, if you want to, I'd be happy to chat to you about what we did last time in the past for some Christmas stuff as well.
Yeah.
So you might have it in notes, but yeah, I mean, I think we had like some marshmallow roasting or hot chocolate or something. So yeah, definitely we can talk more.
That would be super helpful. Yes, thank you.
Great. The next item is the construction updates.
All right. So hopefully people have noticed, perhaps you haven't been down there, but the Catherine Street is complete. Got an email today that not only is the road open as it's been for a couple weeks, but the bike lane, brand new bike lane, is now also open, going on that stretch of Catherine between Division and Main. So that's exciting. That's over. Obviously, it did go on a little longer than what we had been told, but of course there was a broken water main on 4th. So that was the big holdup on our side of things. I wanted to appreciate, all the vendors that helped navigate that, because I know that was sort of difficult, because it was very hard to get from the Detroit Street side of the market to the other market lot and also to the courthouse lot. So that took a lot of finagling, and we know that we heard, at least from some customers, that they were pretty frustrated. It was hard for them to get down there during that. But, now it is over, and it's as if it never happened. So we're on the other side of it now, just in time for the cold weather. So there you have it.
And 330 Detroit Street.
Yeah, so I keep looking over there, expecting every day to come and the ground to be broken already. But they haven't started yet. As far as I know, the last I heard, it was going to be sometime in November. But with the holiday coming up next week, I'm not sure if that's actually correct. I haven't received any additional updates from the development team. All I do know is that they did put up their little signboard with the mock-up of what the building will look like. That's the only signal that we've got that, construction is imminent. With that said, we're kind of hoping in a way that it does start in the wintertime when we don't have Wednesday market, when our impact will be pretty minimal because they're not going to be doing any construction on Saturdays. But it's sort of at a wait and see at this point. That's all that I know.
Okay, great.
This is a little off topic, but I
Sure.
was wondering if you had any luck talking to Community High about getting the wording changed about on the parking signs. No.
No, I mean, the closest we got is my supervisor, Josh, reached out to whoever is in charge of it, and they pretty much just said that the police are no longer monitoring it whatsoever. It's just Community High now. But beyond that, I don't really have a point of contact or anything, because it's the school now. It's no longer KDA oversight. So yeah, we've tried, but it sort of hit a dead end on that.
So does that imply that the school could take the signs down?
I mean, I don't know why they would, because it's a Monday through Saturday thing. It's specifically the question Stephanie's bringing up is the signs say Monday through Saturday, no parking, right? When it's in reality, probably Monday through Friday. And I think it just was going based on what the meters had previously said, that they just took the meters out, replaced it with a sign with the same language, and then took away any of the enforcement, is as far as I know. We've been trying to track them down and talk about this for months. The closest I was able to get was what I just told you that Josh was able to find out. But as of right now, I still don't have a contact person who's in charge of that.
But you're saying it's in the city, in the department, the school part is there.
Exactly.
Mhm,
So it's
mhm.
no longer city at all anymore.
Yeah. So AAPS in that way.
Correct.
Yep.
Yeah. And again, I'm not even sure within that milieu who is the person.
Because it could be worth the ping to Superintendent Swift. Is that who this AAPS? They're just to actually ping them to address this problem, because they should be able to have people in their office at least to redirect to somewhere that's relevant. And it seems like this is not something they never deal with. They obviously have some means for that, but it seems like reaching out to them explicitly would be worthwhile, by at least getting an ask in there.
Yeah, and that's what I think that Josh did try to do, and that's all the information he was able to get. So I don't know if he was able to get any more actionable items in process at all. But yes, we can still find that out somehow, maybe, hopefully. But as I know, people have been parking there, vendors have been parking there, no problem. It's just a question of the sign confusing customers.
So, and you've been encouraging vendors to park over there?
I haven't been, not necessarily. I mean, what had happened was because of the construction disaster, meaning that people could not get from load in to parking, a lot of people were just parking there instead. And they were fine, as far as I know. Even when we tried to give people alternative routes to get in, especially during the Oktoberfest weekend, which that's a whole nother thing, where the other parking lot was pretty much not accessible simply because of the turn radius, with all the tents there and with 4th and Catherine intersection being closed. But no, we are not telling people to park there because, again, we don't want to tell them something that's not correct, even with all of the assurances we've been given, right? It's not our jurisdiction. So, but people have parked there historically for a really long time, right? And they just relied on it a little bit more when the construction was ongoing.
Okay. I may have the contact information for head of school there. Would that be appropriate?
I don't know. I mean, if they have the oversight, I don't see why not. I'm just not sure, who the correct person even is in their bureaucracy to talk about these things.
Okay.
Because it's a new thing, right? It's new to them during the pandemic as part of their construction project. So it might even be, somebody who's involved in the construction of community that might know.
Okie doke. Are we on to the rule changes now for the update? The rule changes, I think we are.
I believe so.
Okay, so the first thing on there is to get a report from the producer-only special committee.
Hi, I guess that's me.
Yep.
Not actually not much to report. We have not held a meeting or anything. We have talked to a number of vendors, and there are definitely some that are interested in joining the conversation. And when we do finally have a meeting, have said they would like to attend. So it's definitely a topic that I think people want to have input on. I think what would be helpful today, right now, would be, I think one question I have is if anyone knows what the rules are surrounding special committee meetings, like, does the city record it just like they would our meeting? How far ahead of time does it need to be publicly published? Do any of those apply?
No.
And no?
Mm-mm.
Okay.
Mm-mm.
All right. So and then another question I had was, do we need a quorum of any sort of representatives from this group?
I don't think so. I think you can just pretty much create the parameters of this, because in essence, it's a subcommittee that reports back to the regular committee. So anything that you would have been talking about gets reported out, and that's what gets recorded. So I don't think that there's anything official of that nature unless you want to create it.
Okay, that makes it easier. That's great. So then I think my goal would be to probably set a date and maybe create a Zoom webinar to hold a discussion before next meeting, hopefully. And maybe if Stephanie, you can help us get the word out once we do have a time and date set to vendors, that would be helpful.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Stephanie Willett, I just want to read you the section from the market bylaws on the special committees. And I didn't have time to check to see if the city requirements have anything, but it says, this is on Article 7 under meetings, section 2, and it says special meetings may be called by the chair or by written in writing by the majority of the members currently serving on the commission. We've already done that part last meeting where we created the committee. And it says notice to the staff and all commissioners shall be provided at least 24 hours in advance. Public notice of the special meeting shall be posted at least 18 hours prior. And these are special meetings. So I guess that's not a special committee.
No, that's not the same as a subcommittee.
Yeah, so let's that was the only thing that I was
That would be
seeing.
if we wanted to do like an additional meeting to discuss producer only rules before a vote. That would be sort of that.
Okay.
I don't think in my history here we've actually ever done a subcommittee, so this is new territory. But a useful thing, I think, actually something just from our organization, I think that does to delegate out some of the work and get some of that done. But the thing is too, just making sure we don't run afoul of Open Meetings Act by essentially having it be like a closed door thing. That's not the intention. So.
Well, I know with the Greenbelt, all subcommittees is sort of like a separate thing, right? A lot of times they'll do it with like the committee to try and recruit other members or, things like that. And that's not needed for the open meeting as long as there's a report out to the broader group. There's no requirement for that.
All righty. And so, Stephanie, well, you're just thinking of doing them on Zoom then.
Yes, I think it's the format we've been using, and it seems like most people have access to Zoom. So it seems like, and I mean, I'll probably try and get a better idea of what those who are interested in participating feel comfortable using. But right now, I think that Zoom makes the most sense.
And then will you use the Market Zoom webinar?
I hadn't thought that far ahead.
Okay.
Maybe I'll just get with Stephanie later and we'll figure out what makes the most sense.
Yeah, that's
Great.
really easy. I could just make you an alternative host and we can just have a separate meeting for that scheduled. As far as I know.
Great, thank you. Next item is the transfer of seniority
No,
process.
we're jumping ahead. We're not done with the producer only.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I actually invited Alex to come talk about his perspective as a inspector and also as market staff. 2 different hats, 2 different perspectives in one person. Because I figured, that was what folks had asked about before. Plus, I know Alex has a lot of stuff to say about this, given his experience and overall. So go ahead, Alex.
Okay, sure. Yeah. Well, thanks so much for having me. As you may know, I've been taking on some inspections, and I guess maybe at this point the subcommittee hasn't met yet and everything. We don't have to get super bogged down in details, so I'll try to be brief. But I've been reviewing this draft from the producer-only language from back in 2020. I think it was discussed at the last meeting, which I read the minutes of. And maybe from an inspector perspective, I can shed some light on this conversation. And I think one thing that might be helpful would be for everybody to review our current vendor inspection report form. It looks like this. It's many pages long, and maybe we can send that out to everybody. And which is not to say that it isn't in need of updating, or that like our whole inspection process couldn't be improved, because I think certainly it can be. But that looking at what we're already doing may ease some minds or address some of the concerns that I see outlined in this draft. So like, for example, land ownership and lease information is something that we already require in our application. Our application 2 is very extensive, and we cross-reference the inspection report to the application. As an inspector, I print out the vendor's application and product list. And so while I'm there, one of the things I'm checking for is, does the property information that I'm observing match what we have on file? And same thing with the product list. And and then I have the producer run me through the whole process. And that this is actually like in our vendor inspection report form too. There's like questions that give me a place to start and everything like that. So show me how you get this product, this tomato, from seed to market, or show me how you make this soap from raw ingredients to soap bar. And through that process, granted, I do have a smaller sample size. It's pretty clear to me whether or not the producer is growing, making, or adding value to the product. So while I do, I understand the desire for further specificity, but I can see that with each each added detail might open a whole new can of worms, or like, each line of clarification maybe requires its own caveat in some cases, at least. Like, for example, equipment ownership, like, in the case of if I borrow my neighbor's tractor implement or something like that. Or, I've inspected a bakery that operates out of an incubator kitchen, and that baker doesn't own the ovens or the stand mixer, but he certainly buys the flour and all of the other ingredients and produces the bread. There's no question about that. So, and then also like maybe with the employee-employer relationship, like I saw this language in here about no independent contractors, or an independent contractor is an employee, and just like, I can see how that might get hairy from an inspector perspective of like how to enforce that. We're currently not like requiring legal documentation of employment. We ask that the vendors put employee information, basic employee information for everybody that might be involved in the market on their application. But, if the farm laborer and the farmer work something out and it's a 1099 versus a W-4, I don't know if that's our business, or, maybe it just gets a little hairy there from the inspector perspective and the enforcement perspective. And I think there's a couple other bits, amendments in this draft that could just be that, again, I like agree with I understand the reason for, but could just be like difficult to catch and enforce. So like, like we don't want vendors at the market, buying a plant or an animal fully grown and like turning around and selling it the next day. But at the point of inspection, to find out like how old is that chicken? How long have you had that chicken? And then do that for everything. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm definitely like open to suggestions, but like, is the producer able to like produce all these receipts upon inspection and everything, birth certificates? I don't know. But so and then with the nursery too, like I see the suggestion about the inspector visiting the nursery twice in the year. And I think like, in a perfect world, and if we could do that, I could see how that might be good, especially if it eases people's minds. But I just want to point out that, we're already over budget for inspections. We were over budget months ago, which is the reason that I've been taking on some of these inspections to begin with. And, but the more extensive inspections, I could see how we may be restricted in that effort just by budget. And I think it's very fortunate too that like I'm here now and I'm able to take on some of this extra work, and that I have a background in growing and selling food. But we might not always be so fortunate in the future. And Stephanie had to advocate just to expand the hours of my position, and currently like doing the inspections isn't part of the position description. So I mean, that brings up a whole other issue, but we are limited somewhat in our ability to do these inspections, so that it might not be feasible to go visit a nursery twice in a year. They're already being inspected too by the Department of Agriculture and stuff like that. So anyway, so far I haven't encountered any red flags, but again, I haven't done a ton of inspections yet. Most of the inspections I've been doing have been artisans or value-added producers. And so I saw there were some questions in here about where some of these types of producers fit into the producer only, like a soap maker. And in my experience, it's actually easier to determine the producer only status of artisans and value added people. It's like, did you make the thing? Show me how you make the thing, and the farms that I've inspected have all passed, with flying colors. And I was able to, bring the product sheet, and they showed me, oh, this crop failed. And I could like make a note of that, or like, oh, I added this crop this year and there's the 100-foot bed of it, So, and then lastly, did want to point out, that the last time a farm was accused of reselling, we did a surprise inspection and they passed the inspection. And the last time that an inspector failed an inspection, which I think in our records was like in 2011, that vendor was kicked out of the market. So certainly there are shortcomings to the inspection process, and there are improvements that could be made. And maybe some of this language too, or these things can just like go into the inspection report form as opposed to like an official rule change. But and I'm happy to work with the subcommittee when it meets to, answer any questions, take suggestions, address hopefully any concerns. So there's that. And then, taking off my inspector hat and putting on my farmer market staff and Ann Arbor resident hat, it pains me to hear that there's low morale about, with the perception that there are vendors that are breaking these rules. But I do think that, the vast majority, 90+% of our vendors are following these producer guidelines to the T. And the vendors that may be operating in the gray areas are, they're honest and hardworking people. They're run local businesses. They offer unique products, and they are, I think, trying to make a living and not trying to cheat or screw over. And if we do, have some bad actors, they haven't been caught yet. And, and I do agree to that some of the language is needlessly, albeit unintentionally, exclusionary when it comes to ownership of land and equipment. Because, people are operating out of incubator situations, people are borrowing equipment. I don't think that should bar them from selling at Ann Arbor Farmers Market.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Alex. That was super helpful. Did anyone have any commentary, questions, responses?
I have a quick follow-up, Alex. That was super helpful. Again, thank you. I think a lot about, making this a valuable conversation, what we're going to be able to get out of it is going to be how we structure the just how we are asking for comments and what we really focus on at the meeting. And so maybe it would make sense, before calling it, to talk about how are we going to moderate this, especially because I think feelings can get intense around some of the subjects, and really the foremost question is like, what are we wanting to get out of this meeting? And so, really looking at how to talk about it will be important. So maybe, it sounds like you have a lot of thoughts on it. And of course, Stephanie does, like going over that agenda ahead of time. I mean, I'd love to have input on it, and I'm not sure who wants to lead that conversation, like when we actually have it, but that would be super helpful, I think. So yeah, that's all I had.
So actually that raises a question for me about, we created the subcommittee last time, and then Stephanie and Jeff were going to recruit producers, but who will be making the agenda and running the meeting and things like that, just so we know logistically who's responsible for those things.
Well, I think it has to be the producer representatives. That makes the most sense to me.
Meaning Stephanie, or meaning
Yeah, I mean I'm definitely happy to do that, especially because I have an interest in this. So yeah, like I said, I'll get with you guys when I'm making the agenda and make sure to incorporate Alex's and Stephanie's thoughts as well.
Great, thank you. All right, are we ready to move on?
I believe so.
All right, so next we actually have the rule changes, which are the transfer of seniority process. So Stephanie, do you want to just briefly summarize the sections of the changes?
Yep. Not sure if people saw the draft or not. I could share my screen if that would be helpful. Let's see. And this is the one with the highlighted area. So the things that are in yellow are the language that we're changing. And again, this is very, very minor alterations of the language. If anything, it's just numerical alterations in 6 places. The first one has to do with annual artisans.
Let's do the seniority one first, since I think that's
Okay.
a lot simpler.
I just had it in reverse on my document. So let's see if I can scroll on down. So this one is about the transfer of seniority to be updated. The only changes we're making here is we're adding on 30 days to the time frame that people get to submit their transfer of seniority application. So previously, if a vendor passes away, it was at 60 days that they had to complete and submit a transfer of seniority application. We have changed that to 90 days. And with a vendor retiring, as well as a vendor selling their business, now there is a 60-day, as opposed to the previous 30-day turnaround, that they would be able to submit the application to do so. Again, this was to alleviate some bereavement issues that come with the death of a vendor, as well as all of the intricacies that come from retirement and selling a business, where there's all sorts of other things that I thought 30 days was somewhat of a difficult ask. So we just expanded it to make it easier for people to navigate the complexities that happen after these events, while also maintaining their seniority status. Nothing else in the language will change at this time.
Great. The one other thing that I was wondering about that it looks like you figured was not necessary was saying that if there were extenuating circumstances, to contact the market manager if the deadlines couldn't be met. So
I believe that already says that
okay.
Further down or at some point throughout. At least I remember seeing that previously. Or maybe it's not in this section, maybe it's in the section directly following it. But I did not include in this document. Okay.
So I think let's vote on this section, because I think this is going to be easier than others. And I think what I'll do is propose a motion that we vote on this transfer of seniority section for the operating rules. So I guess Peter, do I need a first and second for that motion?
Well, it depends too. Are we voting to discuss or are we voting to vote? Because normally I think the sequence would go, we first discuss, and then then there might be a movement to actually an adoption movement, which would have a second and then a vote in that way.
Perfect. Thank you. So are there any discussions on the transfer of seniority to the change for the market rules?
To chime in, it seems to me at least, seems fairly non-controversial. This seems like a pretty easy adjustment, and it seems to make sense. And it doesn't seem like it's going to have, I can't foresee any major negative and potentially some fairly positive outcomes. So that seems like a good thing.
Anybody else? Okay. So now we will, I'd like to vote on this issue. Could I get, well, I'd like to, this is where I'm, my,
I make
the
a motion
language.
that we vote.
Okay, great.
To approve.
All right, so let's have a motion to vote on the seniority aspects of the market, the changes to the market rules. Could I have approval, get the approval for that? So, motion to approve from Peter, and probably need a second.
I
Great.
second. Or Eric.
Thank you. All right, so I will call on the commission members, and you can let me know if you vote yay, nay, or abstain. So Commissioner Wolf.
Yay.
Yay. Commissioner Farrell.
Yay.
Commissioner Nemeth.
Yes.
Commissioner Willett.
Yes.
And I will also vote yes. So we have unanimous approval on the change to the seniority of the market rules. So great. All right, so let's do the artisan vendor.
All right, let me cue back up my screen so that we can view along. All right, so this is the one we've talked about the last 2 to 3 to 4 meetings. And this is specifically the element here about allowing current annual status artisans who pay for 2 stalls to be able to be assigned those 2 stalls. So subsection B, the only change there is it used to say 1 stall annually. Now it says 2 stalls annually. And then letter C, that was excuse me, that was updated to include those specific vendors who are annual artisans that already pay for 2 stalls. That would be allowing them to have that within the 13 vendor footprint that the previous exception had created. So it's 18 total stalls because there's 5 vendors that have and utilize and pay for 2 stalls who are annual artisan status. And there are 8 that only use 1 stall for that. And the other change to, which Peter mentioned in his email, is to recall that there's actually only 142 stalls in the market, not 144, like it said before. One of those got taken when the walkway was expanded after the picnic area, 5th Detroit Street Nexus redesign. And then the other one is stall 111, which is a spar stall, which is sort of a ghost stall because it's somewhat out of the market onto the sidewalk, but of course not the sidewalk area that blocks walkway, the part that's really literally adjacent to the vendor's other stalls. So that's another reason why that changed for the overall numbers.
Okay, so.
But that's it. Nothing else in the language is changing.
So I guess questions, discussion now that we're actually seeing the wording of this.
I'm from the one thing that's still, and I'm just worried that there's the little puzzle that we're setting some future committee up for dealing with is that the 18, specifying the number of stalls and then having the number of vendors that we have. If we have 13 artisan vendors and they all wanted 2 stalls by right by section C or B, then they could have 26, but then they wouldn't have 18. I don't know how we resolve that. Is there already a mechanism for that I'm just not seeing, or is there not a mechanism for that?
I mean, the resolution we had was keeping the cap at 13, right? And then locking in pretty much everyone who has it now at that. And then we had talked about revisiting. But truthfully, I really do think the only, solution numerically would be to get rid of the numbers completely, because it's making it a lot more difficult for us in the future. That's one option. Another option is to just, merge the lists and not have any of this. right? A third option would be to maintain the 2-stall maximum for artisans and then just sort of figure it out by seniority as things are available. But, part of this was we did talk to all the artisans, and those 8 that currently use 1 stall have told us that they have no interest in ever having a second stall. So I really do think the question then becomes, for the future, when there are new people getting their annual artisan status. But, with that said, it could be the same thing as before. If, you can only have 1 stall until another one comes available, right? And we can just sort of work it out like it had done previously. But so the way I look at this is sort of like the temporary stopgap compromise, so that we could make sure that everyone that pays for and uses 2 stalls who's an annual artisan can do so immediately, and then sort of figure out the other broader, almost philosophical questions later. So I don't know. There's not a definitive answer, I guess, is the answer.
And I guess the question would come for same thing with the producers too, in terms of if all the producers, I don't know, can they have a maximum of 3 stalls? I don't remember what is it. If everyone decided they tomorrow wanted or next year wanted 3 stalls, then how would you deal with that? Because I assume not everyone could have 3 stalls. So it's the mechanism question is the same. And so that's where I don't know the rules well enough to know how those things are resolved.
Yeah, so it's based on seniority. So pretty much when we do the stall reassignment, it starts at 1 permanent stall, right? And then you can get your second permanent stall. And then over time, as it becomes available, you get 3. So we had a few of our more, newer farms this year that did get their 3rd stall. Brian's farm, Green Things Farm got their 3rd, or maybe that was last year, Sealy Farm. But that was just a process of only as it comes available, are you allowed to assign yourself to your second stall or 3rd stall. So again, that would be constrained on, are you even becoming a vendor with seniority or not? Because we can always just not promote them if there's not space available for what they need. Or again, it's 1 per 1.
So in that case, if that
help?
Same protocol worked for the artisans, that would seem
Yes.
like that helps to explain. I don't know if that's written in there or if that's how that so we could theoretically have 18 artisans if they all had 1 stall, or we'd have 9 if they all had 2.
Theoretically.
That's just based on seniority and how things shake out in 10 years, 20 years from now, that those are both possible scenarios in this at the extremes, and probably be somewhere between.
Yeah, and that's the thing. If we want to keep this cap, we can, and then we'll just work it out like we do normally through, people gaining their seniority or not. Or we can decide to, change the ratio or whatever. I'm not sure.
So then the answer to the question too is, if there are 13 vendors and they all wanted to, they couldn't. Right?
It would be based on seniority and availability. Yep.
There would only be 18, and that's the answer, because that's what's in rule.
Yep.
C.
And that's the thing. Like, that's why we made sure we talked with every vendor that already has their seniority who's an annual artisan, confirmed with them that they don't need a second stall. And many of them even balked at the idea. They were like, that's too expensive. I don't ever want to think about that. I'm not interested at all. It wasn't even if it's available, maybe. It was absolutely not, we're not interested answer. So, but you're right. In the future, if we kept that cap, that would mean that's the amount of permanent stalls. And that might lead to another situation again, where we have somebody who on a day-to-day is using 2 stalls, but they only have a single stall assigned. So if that were to happen, we really are just postponing the inevitable of coming to this conversation again.
Stephanie, would you envision that it works just like with the producers? So if there is 1 artisan space that becomes available, it first goes to a new artisan before being offered to as a second stall to an existing annual artisan?
Yeah, I think after all of these people that have been waiting for their second have gotten through, I think so. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Sort of resets.
Okay. Yeah, in my mind, I guess when we talked about it before, I was thinking it was going to be artisans are allowed to take up to 2 annual stalls. And then we're capping the number of like artisans, not stall number, but like number of annual artisans at 12 or 13.
That's what I remember too.
Well, yeah, but this was what it was already written in here as. Like the 13 thing was actually not in these rules or in the previous rules. So it just had the number, right? It was just written like here, I'll go up so you can see what I'm talking about. See, right, it had here the C was like shall be 12 and the total number. So it actually was written that way before. So I used the exact same template that it was already stated as. And kept it with that 13, given the fact that we got 5 new people that were already paying for and using for 2 stalls. Right. So that is what we talked about. And then that was why the question was sort of like, do we leave this? We're going to have to probably just come back to it again, right? This is just another form of the compromise based on the 13 number that was previous.
So I have a question. So basically the brass tacks of the whole thing is, it looks like we're taking 6 stalls that normally would be up in the air for producers or for farmers, and we are adopting them for use for craft vendors. Is that correct?
I don't like the framing of taking, because again, these are people that are already paying for these stalls.
Yeah, that's not what I meant at all. I'm just trying to put it. I'm just trying to make sure I'm understanding.
I just think that makes it confusing to think about it that way, and I think that's also like what leads to people being, getting confused about it.
So we're moving 6 stalls from that spot to make for the craft people. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it properly.
Yes, what we're doing to reiterate is there are 5 artisans that pay for 2 stalls who are annual status, and they've never been allowed to actually own their second stall.
Got it.
So this would be to allow that to happen.
Okay, so I think personally that it's very important that we leave the numbers. So basically all we're doing is we're changing the numbers.
Yes.
Yeah, no problem. I just wanted to make sure. I think it's very important we leave the numbers though, because that does leave everyone's fear, because everyone does have the fear of it, of the market being overtaken by craft people. I don't think it's going to happen personally, but I'm just saying those numbers, that would still protect that, even though it's not an issue. It just puts everyone's mind at ease.
I just want to reiterate, and I said this in the email, that all of these artisans in play have been at the market a minimum 28 years. Right.
I was there with them, so I know.
I know, you know, but I don't understand where this fear is coming in, because again, I let in 1 artisan since I've been here. Stephanie has let in 2. So I just don't understand where that sentiment is coming from, other than like people worrying that they're going to lose something that is not at stake for loss.
I understand. I just think it's important to leave the numbers there. And I think no problem on my end with the changes. I just want to verify that. I just wanted to make sure I understood what was going on.
Sure. Yeah, no problem. And I understand. And I know that this is a long-standing conversation where these fears are going on. And I think that's another reason why the other parts of the conversation were tied to, maybe this is a broader conversation about capping the number that, we're allowed to bring on at any given time, right? Or if there's not any spaces available, because as it stands right now, any artisan, I automatically refer them to the Sunday artisan market. The only exceptions I make is if it's something that's like amazing, that we don't have it all, that's clearly within our demographic in terms of sourcing from local, utilizing farm products. And the other thing too, we need to remember is some of these producers are also farmers. They're people that don't have the right ratio of things. So for example, like Nancy Willoughby, right? She grows a bunch of her own flowers and things like this, but she's primarily a potter, right? She works with ceramics. So that's the other thing that I think we need to remember here is that we also have this other part of the ratio where it's like 51%, if your stuff's 51%, non-food, even if it's based off of you growing all the items, you still are an artisan. So I just need to, just want to remind folks that this is also part of this conversation.
And I think, from my understanding, you've probably heard this before, but these rules and that cap came out of a time when the market did have a lot more artisans in it than producers. And I think at some point, that's why the Sunday artisan market was created, because it split off and then a lot of the artisans went to that market instead. And then people felt like, well, that's not what we want the market to look like. We want it to be more producers on Saturday. And so that's why the cap was put in place. And so I think that a lot of the fear, not that the number 18 is going to make there be, a ton of artisans at market, but I think the fear is coming from some of the vendors, at least that I've heard from, who were there during that time, when they were trying to resolve, change the way it looked at that point.
I was never under the impression that there was actually more artisans ever than food producers. So maybe I didn't know that aspect of it. I know that there was some difficulties, in the 80s and 90s of getting anyone to be a vendor. But I think that's the other thing we need to remember is that I get nervous that we're going to turn people away, or we're going to make people feel like they're not welcome. Because seriously, if the market's not a full market, regardless of what the products are, that's a negative impact on everyone. Because people come and they say, where'd everyone go? Right? We even see this on Wednesday market where people come and they say, where is everyone? So I worry that we make it so restrictive that we're going to make it so that when some of our farmers retire, which is going to be in the next 5-10 years, we're just not going to have a robust market. And again, maybe that's part of the conversation later. If people want a fourth stall, maybe they can get, whatever. I mean, I've even had people ask me, say, oh, well, the artisan's getting a second stall. Does that mean I get a fourth stall? And again, I think it's just a situation that we've gone so long having this 2 tiers of basic citizenship within the market. We're getting bogged down in how to get out of it. Right. And we're getting bogged down in, numbers and this and the other thing. When in the email that I sent, right, the vast majority, 12 out of 13, these are women-owned businesses, right? These are businesses that have been at the market almost 30 years, over 30 years for some of them. So I get the fear, but I think the fear only comes because we have this 2-tier system, right? Whereas no one wants to feel like they're that second tier, and they know it's been happening to someone, so they're worried it's going to be them next. And I think that's really where I've been coming from for this whole time, that I think, this is like a stopgap. This is a compromise, but this is not a final solution. And this does not fully address the issue, which is ongoing. But at the very foundation, if we have vendors at our market that do not feel valued, that's really where the morale is bad. It's not from somebody that's not sold one item that slipped through the cracks of our inspection system. It's not valuing people because we don't trust them, right? And again, I don't know if this is off topic or not, but I think, that's where a lot of the frustration I've heard from the artisans comes through. And some of the newer vendors, they have no concept that any of these conversations are even going on at all. So I think it sounds like there's obviously a lot of trauma from past decades and past whatever, coming through, but we need to move on, and I think that by creating all of these restrictions, I do think that in the long term, we're actually doing ourselves a disservice, even though it might feel good in the short term. Because again, I look at the market and I see so many vendors that are farms without succession plans, right? I gave a presentation at a conference about CSAs last weekend. And, I had to talk about, it's fantastic. We have all these multi-generational farms and all these things. and everyone thinks that we're just somehow not letting farms in, but people aren't applying. We don't have more people that are quality food producers that we're turning away, right? I know I've heard people make comments like, it looks like a flea market. I don't know. I've never been to a flea market that looks like our farmers market. We're primarily food producers. And even with that said, how many of the artisans, again, are also farmers? They just happen to be potters. They happen to make, I don't know, cards on the side. So I don't know. I don't know where I'm going with this other than I feel like it's silly and counterproductive to have these categorical separations. It just makes everyone feel bad, and it makes people needlessly at each other's throats. So anyway, again, I think this is a good compromise for right now, but I don't think that it is a long-term solution to this problem.
That, I'm kind of wondering, obviously this conversation, like you just said, is not over, and we will be talking about this as a commission in the future. And going to Bruce's comment in the beginning about when he called in about, sending the information out and like including more people in the conversation, is the goal, or is your goal, like, would you like to pass this now and then like really, really dive deep into this in the coming months?
I mean, here's my thing. I feel like we've already given people a lot of opportunities to participate. I've had this conversation with multiple people. We've had artisans talking to people. All of the minutes and the videos for our meetings are readily available online. I don't know what good it will be to wait further, other than just making the artisans feel like we did something for them and then revoked it, or that it's somehow unstable. Because again, what impact is it going to have on other people? No one's getting stalls taken away. This is changes nothing. It only allows people to finally not be as demoralized. If the whole question was about morale, we have people that are literally demoralized because of how they've been treated as second-class citizens at this market for decades. And we have an opportunity to change it. I don't think waiting to get more input from people that have already provided it really would help. And I try to communicate as much as I can in emails. I send 3 emails out per week where I give a ton of information. A lot of people do read it, but a lot of people don't. So I think the other problem then becomes communication as a whole. But what does it really, I don't know, what does it really change? Are we going to say no? We're going to go back on this thing that we told the artisans that they could have? Like, what's the point of that?
I guess one question is kind of going back to Bruce's comment though too, is that has the market seen the written draft? Because I only saw the written draft 24 hours ago.
I mean, anyone can ask us at any point about this. All of the minutes are in online. All of this has been written in the minutes. I talked about all of these things. Maybe it's not the specific number, but we talked about this over and over again. But I guess, and yes, I agree. Maybe, we could have been more communicative, but again, we've been incredibly short-staffed with Alex being gone. It's been high season. We've been having all sorts of things going on. I've been very overextended, being down one person. But again, this is something that I've heard from many vendors on. We've talked about this in detail. So I just don't know. I mean, and again, I'm not trying to say people shouldn't be able to talk and voice their opinion, because they can, but people can also come to me directly and we can have this conversation. It doesn't need to be in a public forum. It doesn't need to be, via email. And I guess really, I just would rather it just be completed. I don't, like we have other things. This has been at least resolved to a compromise point, at which then if we want to get more people involved in the broader conversation, I think then we can go there. Whereas this was something that needed to happen quickly. because of the time frame of the move up, right? That we had an opportunity to fix this problem and we took it. You know, but as I said, as we all said, this is not the conversation is not over. And it's going to go into, you know, the next phase, most likely next year after we sort out some of this producer only stuff.
So I hear what you're saying too about, there's been a lot on your plate, and getting that has been a lot. And I really do appreciate that too, because it's been a lot to navigate through that. And I think that's why last time too, I was pushing for having, before we voted on it, actually having something written, because I've heard too this time that with even on this committee, some misunderstanding of exactly whether it was capping the number of artisans or capping the number of things. And they're both kind of in the noise in terms of how functionally they change things out, but despite the conversations, even in my head, there was ambiguity. And so that's the beauty of writing it out. So then there's no ambiguity. But the other part of that is then sharing that widely too, so that again, it's the same kind of thing for just kind of procedural justice. Kind of, okay, this is what the text is, and that everybody knows what the text is. And if everyone's seen it, then there's a chance to discuss and have comments on it. So I think I would feel comfortable with it at that point. And I agree with what you're saying in terms of, I think that it's not an ideal solution. We haven't found an ideal solution for this. And it's a stopgap, and there are a lot of different stopgaps in there. So we can operate those in different ways. But I think that, at least from my perspective, I think I would feel, although I hate to delay things, I would feel more comfortable if it were that the text was actually circulated throughout the market to the vendors also, so that they could say that they could have a chance to review it and comment on it. At least so we could hear their comments on the specific text that is being proposed and accepted. That would make me feel more comfortable.
Jeff and Stephanie, can you guys chime in for that? Because you're the ones that are going to have to hear from the vendors. Jeff, we're loving seeing your kids.
Sorry about that.
Twin vision.
So I've been listening, but just what do you want me to comment on?
So the question is, do you think the language which specifies the number of stalls, it just changes the number of stalls, should that go to the vendors, as Bruce was commenting on at the beginning of the meeting, or are you and Stephanie okay with us going through with a vote now, with the language now that we have seen it as a commission?
Well, how would that work? That typically something that's done, or how would that work? There'd have to be like a survey. Is that what you're saying, or?
I think we have already gone through that process of getting some feedback. I guess it's just so everybody knows and there won't be any surprises. We can go ahead and vote on it now, or we can send it out to the vendors and then vote on it next weekend, because that would give them an opportunity to come to the meeting and make comment. There has been time for that, but seeing the actual language has been helpful.
I don't think it's going to change anything, but if that puts everyone's mind at ease more, then I'm not opposed to that, but it's not going to change. I don't think it's going to change mine or Stephanie's vote.
Is it going to make your job easier though, talking to the vendors? Go ahead, Stephanie.
You're putting me on the spot here, and then I'll let Stephanie answer. It would ease up a little bit, I think, but take a little pressure off of us. But I don't know that it's necessary. But if it makes everyone feel better, then I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jeff. I think that as far as the committee goes, we've talked about this enough in depth that we all are of the mindset that this is the right way to go right now. However, I mean, the lucky thing is waiting another month and then voting on it. Like the artisans that need those second stalls have gotten what they need now for now. So like, it doesn't seem like it would hurt if we did feel like it was better procedurally to send it out to everyone. I think the concern would be there would be a ton of feedback. And like, are we going to change, like Stephanie was saying, are we going to change our minds based on the feedback? Probably not. But yeah, I think it makes, I guess it would probably make the most sense just as a procedure. I agree with Jeff. This is like, let everyone know this is what we're voting on. This is what we think. And then really vote on it next meeting, but not like prolong it longer than that. You know, I think part of the frustration is we have been talking about it so long. So, you know, we kind of want to get it done. But I mean, yeah, I don't see that it would hurt.
Because the other thing in terms of timeline would just be, remember, like whatever we recommend, then it has to go to the city attorney to have them check over the language. Then we have to send it to city council. Then they have to vote on it before we're even able to put any of this stuff through. So we're probably talking like minimum 3 months to even get that through it. I mean, is that going to be impacting when people are resubmitting their applications for next year? I don't know. But that's just something to keep in mind, the broader timeline.
I don't think it doesn't seem like it would really impact anything until the next stall move up, would it? Like, I think that since the stalls have been assigned to the artisans that really wanted them, that it'd be okay, right?
I mean, I'm not sure, like it might have an impact on whether or not someone wants to get a second stall again or pay for a second stall again. Because with the deadline of June 30th, but I'm not sure.
But it seems like we'd be well through that by June 30th. I mean, we're talking, if it's 3 months, you're saying, then we've had.
That's just a guesstimate. I mean, it takes a really long time for the city attorney to even assess anything, let alone, you know, council's got a really filled agenda always. So, you know, we might also be tabled there for multiple weeks. But
on the flip side, though,
whatever.
we're about to go into holidays, so nobody's doing all that much anyways. So, Eric, I see you've unmuted. Did you want to add anything?
I don't know. It seems like, I mean, it sounds like there's people uncomfortable. I guess I'd preface it that way. So if there are people who are uncomfortable with the situation, I understand not wanting to vote. At the same time, I feel like the work has been done, and it seems like the decisions have been made here. So I don't know. If I would be delighted to vote tonight, but I can understand why some folks don't want to, I guess.
So another thing that I would say, oh, sorry, I'm sorry. If you weren't done, go ahead and finish. I was just going to say that historically, our December meeting has been like non-existent, or seems like we always canceled that one because it was Christmas time. I would say if we do table it for now, that we just make sure that we do have a meeting next month, even if the only primary cause of it is to get the vote done, just to make sure that we do get it done.
I agree.
I agree too.
I guess my one question is what is our level of like due diligence with this work? Like, do we feel like we've reached that bar or not reached that bar in terms of informing those who need to be informed and those who need to give input? Like, it sounds like we have, but it sounds like people are still uncomfortable with that. So I guess that's
for me, I think the only thing is just circulating the text of the change to everyone, so that everyone has that, and they've had the chance to review it, and that they have an opportunity to comment on them in this forum, and that's the one thing that it's a key one, but that because it actually does show what the text change will be, not just the concept, but the concrete change. And that's the part that hasn't been done, at least as far as I know. And so the idea has been discussed, the minutes, there's a lot of discussion. But I think that textual part is the key part for me.
Yeah, I mean, it was also discussed even during the stall move up, explaining, that artisans were getting their thing. So I think for me, if it makes people feel more comfortable, great. But I don't want to postpone months upon months if it's going to be for like 2 people. I just think that's also not fair to the artisans to make them have an additional feeling of insecurity after they were under the impression that this was already settled, at least for now.
So I think it's just, in your email, Stephanie, saying, we've been discussing this for a long time, see the minutes, here's the wording. Send that out to the vendors, just so everybody knows, and then we will vote on it next meeting, is what I'm hearing. And this is the way we're going to do it, but it's just so that everybody can see the wording, so there also are no surprises for anybody.
I hear you, but I don't know what possible surprise there could be. Anyone who's interested in PMAX stuff seeks me out, seeks out their representatives. The artisans have been talking to everyone. I mean, like the word travels very, very fast at market, much faster than an email, it would seem at sometimes. So I understand. I just don't want to get bogged down in a perception that somehow people are misinformed when I don't think that's true. But again, if that's what people want to go for, fine, whatever. But I just wanted to reiterate that nothing's going to change. And again, what if people are really up in arms about it? What's going to change? I mean, that's already what we've told the artisans they can do because of the move up, right? So in essence, we're already at that number 18, right? And in essence too, like it helps protect market staff to point to something and say, like, we are going based off of this that's already been vetted for months upon months upon months by this committee. So, and if you think that 6 numbers will change that, I guess so be it.
Okay, yeah. So then I guess I would feel more comfortable then if we waited till next time for doing the voting and circulating that through. But
I think let's do that. We need to move on. So Stephanie, just send out an email saying, we've been talking about this at PMAC. Here's the language. We're going to vote on it next time and solidify it. And also let the vendors know that we have changed the seniority rules, that already has been voted on and approved unanimously.
That everyone already knows all of that stuff. I'm very, very communicative in the emails. And I think maybe that's why people no longer read them, because it has all sorts of information in them. So that's the other aspect. It
just makes it an official record. And I think that's where.
But there are official records. That's what I'm saying. It's already been clearly stated multiple times on video.
Yeah.
In addition. And I just, again,
and I want to also acknowledge that it's 7:01 and I haven't eaten dinner yet. So like to get through the rest of the agenda. So let's move on to new business, not a non-agenda item. And so I have something that I'd like to say here, but I'd want to give anybody else any other new business stuff that they'd like to add. All right. So the one thing that I wanted to talk about is that Peter a while ago had suggested that we review the bylaws for PMAC. And I think the most effective way to do this is using the model that you all put together, that we've been talking about for the producer only, and to create a sort of just special committee on that to do the review, come to the PMAC with recommendations on redoing the bylaws or any other changes that we'd want. So I would like to propose that we put together a special committee to just review the bylaws. I'm happy to be on that committee. Would like to see if there are any other volunteers. Peter also.
Yeah, I'd be on
on
there.
that. And then I don't know if we need a market staff person on there. I don't think we do. Is there anybody else that would like to do this? Eric, I was wondering if you wanted to this should be pretty quick and easy. We can probably do most of it over Zoom. You've had experience thinking about strategic planning and things like that.
Absolutely, sure.
Great. Okay. All right. I think we voted on this last time, so let's just say that I'd like a motion to approve creating a second committee to review the bylaws for PMAC.
Motion to approve.
Great. And could I have a second for that? Great.
Second.
Thank you, Eric.
I'll second it.
Great. Thank you. All in favor, say aye or raise your
Aye.
hand.
Hi.
Great. Thank you very much. And then Stephanie, I would like to put on our agenda for the December meeting to revisit how we're going to do the process to keep the discussion going about winterizing the market, structure, things like that. I would really love it if Josh, and I can't remember the landscape architect that came to previous meetings, if they could come to the January meeting to just update us on what the process is and really to get moving on this project while we have the time during the winter.
It's Hillary. And there
Hillary,
actually
thank
is
you.
a new person that has Josh's job that has not started yet.
Okay.
So that's in process. So I'm not sure if he would be available as in past years, because now he's in charge of all parks.
Okay. So if we could pencil that in for the January meeting, I would really love to talk about that process, because we were told a year and a half ago that there was going to be discussion with the vendors and it hasn't happened. So
Just want to asterisk that the snag has come with potential questions about fire code.
yeah. And I guess my question is, and what I'd like to hear is, if the vinyl walls that we had an idea about aren't going to work, then let's figure out how to create a plan to move forward on a plan, especially since the city just voted in climate millage. And there's just a lot of money for sustainability initiatives. So
I think though, just another asterisk, like I'm not sure that that's for parks. That might specifically be for a separate department that is OSI. So just be aware of that as well.
it could be a great partnership, though. So, yeah.
I'm
All
just
right.
not aware if the funding's available is all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well, I think let's put that on something to discuss on the January meeting. And I would love it if somebody from Parks could come to talk about the process. All righty. So I think we're on to our second public comment.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to give an additional comment? I do see a hand. Give me just 1 second. I will allow you to talk, and go ahead and unmute yourself, and you have the floor.
Hello.
Okay, yeah.
Hey, Bruce.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Go right ahead.
Okay. I think that there's very good discussion tonight, and I think it brought up the point that I was trying to make, that I don't think that, the transfer of seniority, I will admit, probably I didn't go to or listen in on last month's meeting because October is just about impossible to do much of anything. And there were a number of meetings that transfer of seniority was on the agenda that it never even got to where it was discussed. So I absolutely had no idea what the thing was on transfer of seniority. I admit part of that's my fault, but anyway, the changes that were made were, I would say, uncontroversial, and so the fact that they were passed, I mean, they probably benefited vendors more than anyone would say that they were hurting them. But again, the discussion that we just had on the artisans thing, I think that that pointed out what I was saying, that these things need to come to us. Yeah, there was discussion, but to see the actual wording of what is going down, I'd never seen that. So, and I don't think it's been put out there. So anyway, that's really all I had to say. I think that the fact that you tabled that because, or didn't take up the vote on it because it hasn't been out, I think was probably good. I agree that basically the changes have been made anyway, so it's probably not going to change, but it just points out that these things need to come to the vendors when there's actual wording. So I guess that is all that I had, and good night.
Thanks, Bruce. Have a great night. And I'm not seeing anyone else that has a hand raised for public comment.
Great. I think we're at an adjournment now. So it is 7:09. And so we will adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for your hard work and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Thank you all.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Thanks.
We'll see you in
Thank you.
December.
See ya.
Sounds good.